This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Anything discussed during this podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all content is for general entertainment purposes only. Listeners should contact their attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal matter. Listening to, contacting us, or any of the links or resources contained within this podcast and or website does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views expressed during this podcast are those of the individual lawyers in their individual personal capacities only.
All the legal ladies, all the legal ladies, all the legal ladies, all the legal ladies.
Well, welcome to All the Legal Ladies, and wine with us as we navigate the fascinating world of legal tales, precedents, and occasional objection-worthy joke. It's season 2, and I'm Kat.
I'm Alicia.
And I'm Marcia.
And today we have a special guest, Amber Wetzel, the Deputy District Public Defender for Southern Maryland. Woo! Yay! So, Amber, my first question to you as we break this new season off is, do you feel aggrieved that you have been diabolically lied to get your law degree and, run this office and not be in the kitchen?
You know, my husband enjoys finer things in life, so he is so pleased that I am his money banks, as he calls me, which is actually not true. But, I wish it were as easy as some folks make it sound.
How about you two? Yes, if I had somebody making $20 million, my life probably would be very different.
Yes,
it sure would.
Yes, it would.
Yes.
Yeah, I could make all of the trad wife content on TikTok with a couple $1 million.
Also wouldn't worry about all the student loan debt I had taken out to get that degree that was worth nothing where I met my husband.
Yep.
It's just so fitting right on the end of the man versus bear content.
Which, by the way, bear.
Yeah.
Bear, depending upon what the man looks like.
Oh.
I don't know. My dad always used to say that, serial killers, were really attractive. So basically don't trust an attractive man because he's probably a serial killer. Which one was he talking about? I can't remember. Somebody from the 70s, I'm sure.
Is that the one that lived in life?
Or, it wasn't Dahmer for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't Dahmer.
Yeah. There were a couple of those. Mm-hmm. Probably bear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what you're getting. You do know what you're getting. And they're more afraid of you than you are of them. Unlike men.
Yeah. Yeah. Poor Marcia. Yeah. Anyway, any other big news that you guys want to share or just talk about in general or dispute the myths of I love to cook. I'm happy being here, though.
Yeah, cook on the weekends.
And it just comes from a different perspective, whatever. I mean, really, history. If you look back at history, it's just who was afforded to stay at home and who, I was like, whatever. It's something to have a degree, and I'm not just, I will be more happy because I'm at home, and when I see my child holding him in his arms, that's worthwhile. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But also being independent, having a career is worthwhile to me too. And so that's why I went to college. That's why I went to law school. And it's not going to vanish because now I'm married and have a child. So whatever. Privilege.
Oh, yes. And the kids leave home.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So having something to do and to talk about, when you're home alone with your partner, that would be lovely.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And not losing your whole identity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And being a mom, that's such a struggle for women to maintain some semblance of self when they become a parent, because obviously your priority changes, right? And your sort of whole world now revolves around this tiny human, but so many women get lost and sort of forget to have a self in that regard. So
Now it's time to get into our first segment, next on the docket, where we'll discuss legal topics for the week. So one of the reasons we wanted to bring Amber in this time is because we started talking about misconceptions that people have about non-private attorneys. So whether that's legal aid or nonprofits or public defenders or like I used to love being called public pretender. So would you like to talk about that some, Amber? What you hear and why is that such a big misconception?
Are you a real attorney?
Yes, let's start with that.
I play one on TV. One of my favorites is like when you finish this like little internship thing, is that when you'll graduate and be a lawyer? Or, you know, when do you get to graduate and become a state's attorney? I really like that one too. Yeah, it's fascinating to me because I didn't know what a public defender was until my first internship in law school that was at the public defender's office. So I understand that people don't really know what we do. It's not taught in our, middle school or high school civics classes, which I think is a disservice to kids. But it's really interesting because we, as public defenders, here in Maryland, and I think all over, are required to have so much more training than the private sector folks who can hang out a shingle and go solo with no real regulation. You just have to graduate and then you can be a private lawyer. And there's nobody watching you. There's nobody training you. But the community and our clients think that there's something so much more special about that than about folks who work for a public defender's office who have to interview and get hired and go through mandatory training and be supervised and all these extra steps.
I think it's an idea where you get what you pay for, and because they're not paying for your services, some people feel like, oh, well, this is the bottom of the barrel, and I am, the attorney is just not trained, like you said. But they don't realize that you do get a lot of training, just like at legal aid. We were required to have so many certain hours of training each year. And they also don't understand that, this is sort of a specialty, and you get a lot of experience doing as a public defender, as a nonprofit attorney, legal aid attorney, because you're doing this day in and day out. And you get to see a lot of different cases. So I think the misconception is, well, my public defender or legal aid, they only meet with me right before the hearing. Sometimes that's the case, but also just because we meet with you right before the hearing doesn't mean that we don't know what we're doing. We know the judge. We appear before the same judges. We work with the state's attorney's office or the public. In our case, when we represented children, Alicia and I, with the public defenders and parents' attorneys. So we knew the ins and outs and what the judge is looking for, what will be the best argument per se.
Yeah, I definitely, when I was a public defender, would try and explain to people that, yes, you can go pay for a private attorney and they will have more time to handhold you because they don't do dockets every day. They don't, deal with being in court every single day all the time. And I was at 100 cases a month, I think, when I was, was it 15 years ago now when I first started? It's probably same or worse now.
Yeah.
And so that is usually the difference. It's just how much time they have to spend with you.
Yeah, and just the depth of knowledge. I remember when I worked at the center, the domestic violence nonprofit, all I did was protective orders day in, day out. I mean, 95% of my cases were protective orders. So I would go with the private attorney, who probably charged a couple $1,000s to be there and would say, oh, I think we should do this. I'm like, well, the statute doesn't permit that. And you're like, well, no, I think we can. I'm like, this statute doesn't permit that. I'm just going to go and ask the judge. We can ask the judge, the statute doesn't permit that. We go in, the judge is like, yeah, what authority do I have to do that? None.
Or like the private attorneys who come from out of town, especially to district court. I will never forget, I had an attorney from Montgomery County in the courtroom one day when I was there, and they were negotiating with the state. And this particular state's attorney was like, if you don't believe me, go ask the public defender. So that felt weird. And then the private attorney asked me, and I was like, oh, well, this judge will do this thing. And she was like, no. And I was like, excuse me? Like, you're not even you don't even go here. But they charge a lot of money. And then come and ask us because we're there.
Well, and that's what I do now as a private attorney.
Yeah.
If on the rare occasions that I venture outside of Southern Maryland, the first person I'm calling is the local public defender's office. Anybody got time to talk with me?
Yeah.
And I think as a public defender, I didn't mind doing that because we want to make sure that every criminal defendant has their day in court and a fair representation.
And especially, like, I want more private attorneys to come take cases here. I want more. I'm never offended when people hire a private attorney because one case off my desk does not hurt my feelings. So keep on coming back if I can make it easy for you.
Yep. Yeah, it's just... I lost my train of thought there, but that's okay. So one of the trainings that we recently took as private attorneys, but also for our contract, because we believe in training, even though Maryland unusually doesn't have CLE requirements for regular practitioners. Again, the difference between is we went to the ABA Children's Conference, and they talked about legal deserts. And even though Maryland you think about as relatively populated, Southern Maryland is a legal desert. We don't have enough attorneys per tens of thousands folks. And so I know that's really hard on the public defender's office.
It is. And, we post commissioner qualifications post-COVID, it just feels like the numbers are so high in terms of caseload. It's also hard to recruit. There was a period of time where the public defender's office here in St. Mary's was a party of one. Hi, it's me. And rebuilding has been tough. The number of students coming out of law school drastically declined in COVID. Kids were deferring entry. Some kids weren't finishing. It was a really uncertain time. And I think the market saw that. And it's so vastly different from those of us who were coming out of law school kind of on the tail end or in the middle of the great crash. It's very different, and finding people who want to practice in a rural area is tough.
Yeah. Well, and you have needs for panel attorneys, right? And that's private attorneys that help out. One is the state of Maryland does not pay nearly enough as a panel attorney. They give me $60 an hour.
Yes.
And I know the public defender's office is lobbying to change that,
but it's hard. And, it's not like with a private client where you get paid on the front end. You have to do the work and submit a bill on the back end. And for people who are trying to build a practice, that can be tough too, not having the sort of income coming in on the front to keep a new business afloat. Because at the end of the day, you have to, as in the private sector, you have to think about those things. You have to think about the business and kind of keeping the lights on, so to speak, in a way that working for a state agency public defender, I don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about finding clients. More than enough clients find me.
And what is the need for, or why is there panel attorneys for the public defender's office?
We panel for what we call conflict cases. So anytime two people are charged with committing the same offense, we can't represent them both. One law firm can't represent both people, or I will say shouldn't represent both people, because generally their interests are adverse, right? Everybody's going to sort of point the finger at each other is the concern. And then you can't represent one person, blame it on the other, but then also represent them and throw the blame sort of back at your first client. So anything that presents a conflict of interest like that, or, if a victim in a case is somebody that has previously been represented by the office, we would have confidential information about that person that would make it a conflict for us to then be cross-examining them on the stand. So in those instances, we ask private attorneys to say, hey, I know this is a very reduced rate that you normally wouldn't accept, but would you do this for us?
Yep. I was talking with a public defender who does the parental defense division recently. So representing the parents in foster care cases, the public defender's office can represent one parent, but then they need panel attorneys to represent any other parents in the case. And sometimes there are multiple other parents in one family. And just talking about that legal desert, trying to find people to take those cases down here for that low rate, and the courts trying to balance, okay, well, we need to have certain conferences, can they be remote? Will they be in person? How many continuances can we do? Because those cases, just like criminal cases, have statutory guidelines, and maybe some of them can't be waived in the same way that criminal timelines can. And just trying to find that balance, because if we start holding strictly no continuances, and, you have to appear in person for these conferences, well, then those attorneys aren't going to take those cases, and then we may not have any panels.
And that's what we find ourselves in right now, because we recently did a training to attract attorneys into the child in need of assistance process. And the public defender also was trying to recruit attorneys to become panel attorneys, because I used to be a panel attorney for the public defender's office as well as CAT, and representing parents. And we are now, because of the PD's own guidelines, are conflicted out of the cases because we represent children sometimes in those Senate cases. And it's a struggle, because just like with criminal, parents have rights. It's a fundamental right to raise your child. They need representation, but the struggle is real with the $60 per hour. And then there was, talk about, well, can you charge for wait time in the courthouse? I was like, if you want attorneys, you better permit them to charge for that wait time, because they could be doing something else on handling a private case, getting paid 5 times more. So you need to make it easier, for people who want to give back to the community, and also,
Yeah. And that's why we do panel cases when we can, because having been a public defender or a legal aid, we understand the necessity for it, and we want the system to move. And I think people lose that side in the conversation when they talk about tough on crime or let's fund the justice system. While public defenders and legal aid are part of that system. And
sure are.
How many do you have in your office?
Right now we have 4.
And how many state's attorneys are there locally?
Woo. It's going to take me a minute. Over a dozen is the answer for sure. They have separate divisions, district and circuit. And in district alone, they have 5 or 6, plus a plethora of core staff members, legal assistants, admin assistants. I believe the state's attorney's office now has 8 victim witness coordinators for the entire county. Or at least I think they had 5 and got funding for 3 more. I mean, that's more individuals than we have spaces in the public defender's office, right? Like historically, since I have worked in St. Mary's, we have been considered fully staffed with 6 staff members. And they are going to have more witness coordinators than we have spaces.
Yeah. And it's just, yes, you don't have every single criminal defendant, but you have
Most of
A
them.
lot.
I mean, I'd even venture to say 90%.
Probably.
And to be less than a third of what the state's attorney's office has. And then you think about it, a lot of cases need psychologists, especially if we're talking jury trials or experts. And you have to rely on Baltimore to bring them down, which then delays things. We had an investigator when I was there, and then he retired. That was it.
That sure was it. We have a panel of investigators who are private investigators in the community who will take cases for us. But again, you have to get them to come here. The same way with experts, I will never forget. I was a wee baby lawyer, so like bright and hopeful, right? And I was getting a psychologist for something that's called a transfer hearing. It's where children are charged in the adult system, and we argue in court, we litigate to try to get them put back in the juvenile system because they're under 18 and just have kid brains that aren't fully developed. And I was on the phone with this expert, and everybody, like, he came so highly recommended. He was really great. He focused on all this adolescent development research. And I was telling him about my client and about my case. And he's like, this is like, I think, this is perfect. This is right up my alley, whatever. And we're talking about dates, da-da-da. And I can hear him typing, right? Because we're on the phone and you hear the click, click, clicks. And he said, where are you again? And I said, St. Mary's County. And he said, what town is that courthouse in? And I say, Leonardtown. Click, click, click. Oh, I can't take this case because of how far of a drive it was, because he was located in Silver Spring.
Yep.
So even just like getting the people here is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there was one psychologist, I feel like his name is Dr. O'Connell when I was working, that did every single incompetent to stand trial or not criminally responsible, because he was the only one that would drive. I mean, he was also very nice and he was very good at his job.
Right.
But he was the only one that would come to St. Mary's County.
Yeah. And it's interesting now in this like post-COVID world, all of our state evaluations are done remotely, even for clients who are out of custody. They're done over Zoom. But if you want someone to do like a full-scale IQ testing, if you think there is some developmental issues, that can only be done in person. Finding people to do in-person evaluations is, I mean, on these transfer hearings, it's now the Department of Juvenile Services, the state, has a psychological evaluation done on every kid. For a transfer hearing, even some of their contract evaluators won't do them in person. It's tough out there.
Yeah.
And it all affects the speed.
Absolutely.
And the ability to be proficient. And so it affects true justice one way or the other, because it either keeps innocent people locked away or it prevents victims from getting closure. And sometimes things happen where they can't be there 2 years later to have a jury trial, and they don't get justice because the system moves so slowly.
Last summer, I was working on a transfer case trying to find an expert who, number one, would drive to the Eastern Shore. Number two, would drive to St. Mary's County for testimony.
Oh my.
Not an easy feat. I found 2 people who were willing to do it. A third was questionable. And each of them, when I was calling in like a June or July, told me the earliest availability they had to take the case and begin work was October or November. For a hearing that by statute is supposed to happen like within 30 days of the initial appearance. And we're having 4-month wait lists.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It kind of gets overlooked because people don't think about it as a necessity, as a place to spend state dollars on, when really it would really help the system function so much better and would provide a lot. So,
yeah. I mean, I hit a low point or a badass point, depending upon your philosophy. In court one day, this was, I want to say like circa 2021. everybody, I was a party of one for the PD's office. I also had an infant at this time. I had a child in 2020, so the height of COVID. So when everybody left my office, my kid was not even a year old. So I have this wee little baby, no staff, and this post-COVID world of like, we're so behind on cases because the courts had shut down jury trials during COVID. And I was getting pressure from the bench about setting cases in. And I had a day where I had like all these violation of probations. I think I had 20 felony violations of probations on one day. And the state was trying to move something and the judge was trying to move something and they were trying to put it on a day. And I just hit my breaking point. So I picked up, like, I'm a paper planner kind of gal, right? And mine was hardback, and I like dropped it on the desk right in front of the mic. And I flipped open to my week and I read off every single thing that I had in my planner. I read off every case I had on every single day. I read off all this stuff, and like, you know, in there was like my kid's doctor's appointment and like all this stuff. And I just read it into the record. And I said, you tell me where I have time to add another case. Go ahead. Because if I can't move, nobody else can move, right? Because the public defenders, like we're a constitutional guarantee to people. People are constitutionally guaranteed a right to representation before they can lose a liberty interest. So if y'all want the system to move, I got to be moving too. And if I can't, then no one can. And I think people overlook the fact that y'all can't go without me.
Yeah, my father-in-law, his job before he retired was evaluating sort of different state systems. And one of his tasks a few years ago was the Oregon public defender system.
Oh, nice.
And so he was telling me all about that. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's a mess. Like, public defender systems are a mess. And yet Oregon and Maryland are in better shape than some other states where they just will hand off to a private attorney who may not even do criminal law. And here, this is yours now.
Yeah. Virginia is similar. They go county by county. They don't have a state system. State system really is the better way of going about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is the same way, my home state. Allegheny County just unionized, which is where Pittsburgh is. Philadelphia Defender Association is, obviously pretty well organized. And then the rest of the state is like, figure it out. I can remember doing research. There was somebody who was like a part-time private attorney and a part-time public defender in one county, and like sometimes a part-time prosecutor in a different county. It's like, what is the great Commonwealth of PA doing? But public defender systems are a mess across the country.
And they are important.
So important.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, people think, oh, well, it's just the lowest income. And it's not, because there are people, military and enlisted folks who don't have enough income that they can put aside for an attorney, private attorney. And so just having that ability to do it. And then Maryland requires all juveniles to have a public defender.
Yes. Regardless of parental income.
Yeah.
And even with talking about military, that's big here because of the base. And when you talk about a legal desert, it can be like our prices, so to speak, for private attorneys can be higher here because there's not a lot of local folks. And some attorneys will increase the price because, we kind of are far away, right? And so they got to drive. If you have to drive an hour or 2 hours to come here and then sit around and wait, that gets built into the cost that's passed off to the client.
Yep. And I think the important thing from this conversation is to realize that public defenders, legal aid attorneys are attorneys. We graduated from law school, we passed the bar exam, and we are needed. If you were ever in a position to need an attorney, you would be blessed to have a public defender or a legal aid attorney. We're just as important as the state's attorney's office, and both should be funded appropriately. And everybody can do their part. Courts can do their part in working within the system to allow panel attorneys to be able to participate remotely, to value their time and not have them wait in court all day because they are basically volunteering, because $60 an hour does not cover your time. And law schools can also do their part, because I remember going to a professor and the professor asking, so what do you want to do after you graduate? And I said, I want to be a public defender. Why a public defender? Why not a state's attorney? And I was like, people need defending because everybody has a right, and you have to make sure that their rights are being protected and procedure is being followed. So we definitely thank you for being a public defender. And if you could have, if you can tell people who are watching why it would be a good thing to come to St. Mary's County or Southern Maryland. Make your pitch.
Okay. So I give this a lot of thought all the time. So I have a couple of answers. One, everybody should move to Southern Maryland because it truly is the best of all worlds. It's not that far of a drive to major cities. I live in La Plata because it's halfway for my husband and I between our jobs. 45 minutes to DC, like an hour to Baltimore, not that far to Annapolis or Virginia. But it is beautiful here. It's beautiful in Southern Maryland. The summers here, admittedly, like I hate hot weather. So, that's tough for me. But we have all this like amazing natural beauty here. Everybody should want to live here because you can drive to the city, you can drive to the water, you can drive to the parks, you can drive to the ocean, the beaches. There's just so much here. And also because it's a great place to practice. We're a small community, but we are pretty tight knit. I think everybody knows everybody. You can always call up whoever is on the other side and talk to them. It's a good place to kind of cut your teeth because it doesn't have the same hustle and bustle of the city. And, the market is ripe for it, whether you want to do private work, whether you want to do even like non-criminal work, whether you want to do public defense, there's opportunity here. And the community is really great, generally speaking. I used to go to like project graduation and hang out with my kids who were graduating, the kids I represent. And the community is really welcoming, I think, and there's a lot of cool stuff here and a lot of room to grow and really cement yourself in the community. So I think everybody should come here.
Thank you.
St. Mary's County Tourism Board also thanks you.
Yeah.
Should make a clip of that and put it on their feed.
We'll have to tag them. But now let's lighten it up a little bit and go to recess. I think our guests should spin the wheel so we can see what game we'll be playing today.
All right. You be the judge.
Oh, that's my favorite. All right. You be the judge. Who is most likely to fake sick so they don't have to show up? If it's a social engagement.
If it's a Girl Scout tent camping event.
Let's see. Get a speeding ticket.
Oh.
Maybe less true, because I remember sitting through a lot of district court traffic dockets waiting for my DV cases. And I'm like, you never see someone for a ticket for less than 9 over. And so I've taken that philosophy into my driving locally.
Unless they know you.
Yeah.
Then they'll pull you over for 3 over.
Who's most likely to win Jeopardy?
Oh.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I used to play Jeopardy. Corey, my husband, and I would play PlayStation Jeopardy. So yeah, and watch Jeopardy growing up. So yeah.
Very nice.
All right.
Well, we are at our last segment, childhood traumas. So I'm going to ask our guest to go ahead and tell us some sort of wild case instead of reading it from Reddit today. Something that you had to deal with.
Ooh, there are so many. So I'll tell the story of the day I didn't know I had a jury trial, because that one's really fun. But like not. So I went to circuit court on Friday, had a case. It was queued up for trial. This was like in the era of like 2021, 2022. So again, like didn't really have staff in the office. So I go to court Friday and I'm like, yeah, this is a trial. It should not have been a trial, but just it was what it was. And they said, okay, your trial's going to start Tuesday. I said, great, because I have VOPs Monday morning. And I had like a lot of VOPs Monday morning. Over the weekend, my dog gets injured. And for anybody who doesn't know me, I am obsessed with my dog. I am like a big dog person. My dog is 70 pounds, thinks she's a lap dog, sleeps on top of me every night. We are tight. And so she gets this like bizarro injury to her paw because she is an adventurer. And I think she had like climbed over a log or a stick or something. And she got this hole, like an actual hole in one of the pads on her paws.
Oh my gosh.
So it happened Sunday night. It wasn't like gaping, but she had to go to the vet. So I said, okay, cool. I have all these VOPs Monday morning. I'm going to take my dog to the vet Monday afternoon. I usually take my dog to the vet and not my husband because I let him take her one time. And he called me because the vet's office is south of our house. So it's on my way to work. And I had to pull over at the vet's office because he couldn't coax her out of the backseat of the car. So he's not allowed to take her to the vet. So I'm like, okay, I will do all these VOPs. I will get out at noon. I will not eat lunch and I will drive home and I will get my dog and take my dog to the vet and have this jury trial Tuesday morning. Because that's just what life was like back then.
Yep.
Also, because I have curly hair, right? My hair just kind of does what it wants. I didn't wash my hair Monday because I was like, oh, I want like these fresh curls, right? As a curly haired person, you know what I'm talking about. I wanted these fresh curls for my jury trial on Tuesday. Yeah. So I'm in court Monday, doing my thing. And this prosecutor is like, hey, why do we have a hearing for, Mr. Client this afternoon? I was like, I think you looked at the wrong day. Like, that's our trial tomorrow. And he said, no, it's on the docket for today at 1:30. And I said, no, it's not. Yeah. Like, it can't be because 1:30 is when my dog is getting stitches in her paw. I'm wearing a suit that doesn't fit and my hair is greasy, right? Like, we are not. And so we called like the assignment office, case management office. And sure enough, somehow after court on Friday, it was decided that in order to keep things moving efficiently, I guess, we were going to pick the jury Monday afternoon at 1:30. In my suit that didn't fit and my greasy hair and my poor dog with a bloody paw at home, I had to go pick a jury that day at 1:30. I had no lunch. It was really awful. And then I never wore that suit again, by the way, because I just believed it was too cursed.
I assume that your dog has since been fine.
Yes. Many injuries later because she still climbs over branches and falls, but she is fine.
Oh, good.
And for those out there, VOPs are
violations of probation. My bad.
Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode of All the Legal Ladies. Thank you, Amber, for being here to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and listen to the audio on your favorite digital streaming platform. As always,
come back with a warrant.